real evidence of anti-Trump bias and raising new questions about President Obama's personal involvement in the Hillary Clinton email investigation. All of this as we await a decision from President Trump on the Democratic FISA memo. A lot happening at the top of the 10 o'clock hour Eastern Time. Good morning to you, Bill. I'm Sandra Smith.
Morning, Sandra. I'm Bill Hemmer. Good morning, everybody. Thousands of newly released text messages between two FBI agents, Peter Strzok and Lisa Page, showing evidence of political bias and conflicts of interest within the Bureau. Now, their opposition to Donald Trump coming to a head on Election Day. Page wrote this: "I bought all the president's men, figure I need to brush up on Watergate." And that's just the beginning. Chief Intelligence Correspondent Catherine Harridge reading a lot as she does there in Washington, D.C. And good morning, Catherine. What do we have?
Well, thank you, Bill. These texts about emails between President Obama and Secretary of State Hillary Clinton are significant. In July of 2016, you'll remember that statement recommending against criminal charges in the Clinton email investigation. Then FBI Director Comey's early draft had a mention of the emails and the likelihood they had been compromised by hackers. This was then watered down by FBI agent Strzok as well as other senior officials just to a minimal reference and then removed altogether. A week before Comey's July statement on June 30th, 2016, Strzok and Page talk about the edits, and the text suggests the edits were done with purpose and to downplay the situation. Quote, "Hope so, just left Bill." This is reference to Strzok's boss, Bill Priestap. He changed president to another senior government official. After the election, both Page and Strzok say they are depressed, and in mid-November, Page writes, "I bought all the president's men, figure I need to brush up on Watergate." Then the next day, Page tells Strzok, "God, being here makes me angry." Lots of highfalutin national security talk. Meanwhile, we have our task ahead of us. Set investigators say this needs more explanation, and they want to understand whether the our task reference is also connected to this insurance policy discussion that they had in Deputy Director McCabe's office just before the election. Bill.
So also now, what are you learning about the Clinton connection with the dossier that apparently something ran through the Justice Department? What's the connection there?
Okay, so this newly declassified criminal referral released by Senators Grassley and Graham shows the FBI relied heavily on the Trump dossier to secure these surveillance warrants, and that Clinton associates were feeding information to the former British spy Christopher Steele as he compiled the dossier. And it reads in part, the report was information that came from a foreign subsource who was in touch with Redacted, a contact of Redacted, a friend of the Clintons who passed it to Redacted. There are indications that the blacked out sections refer to a longtime Clinton ally and friend Sidney Blumenthal, who you'll remember provided intelligence reports to then Secretary of State Clinton through her unsecured personal server used exclusively for government business. Last night on the story, Congressman Gowdy strongly hinted Blumenthal is a possibility.
When you hear who the source or one of the sources of that information is, you're going to think, oh my gosh, I've heard that name somewhere before. Where could it possibly have been? And
the foreign source?
The domestic source. And I'm trying to think how Secretary Clinton defined him. I think she said he was an old friend.
So when you kind of lay it out for context, what you see is almost like this echo chamber effect. You have the former British spy receiving information from a Clinton associate. You have the fact that his research is being funded by the DNC and the Clinton campaign. And then you have him briefing reporters on his findings, and the result of one of those briefings, the Yahoo article, makes it into the surveillance application by the FBI along with the dossier. So it's not only circular reporting, but it almost has this kind of echo chamber effect, Bill.
Very interesting. Catherine, thank you. Catherine Harris, there in
You're
Washington.
welcome.
Sandra's got more on this.
Thanks, Bill. James Freeman is assistant editor of the Wall Street Journal editorial page and a Fox News contributor. All right, let's start with these texts because these are some bombshells, and everybody's left wondering this morning, what was President Obama's personal involvement in the Hillary Clinton email investigation? When you look at this text, which this was happening because one FBI agent said he needed to brief Jim Comey, then the FBI director, this exchange. POTUS wants to know everything we're doing. That was Lisa Page, the FBI lawyer, to someone she was having a relationship with, Peter Strzok, who was working on the investigation.
Yeah, so it applies to both the Russia investigation and the Clinton email investigation. Is we've wondered all along, wow, these seem like pretty high-level decisions, whether it's to spy on your political opponents or to, for Jim Comey, the FBI director, to break all protocols, essentially declare her innocent without ever leaving it to the Justice Department, which normally makes charging decisions. You know, how high did this go? And so now to see in this email from Page to Strzok that she needs to brief Comey because the president wants to know everything, that would suggest if he didn't know everything, he knew a lot, unless they were avoiding briefing him somehow.
So if that's the case, and it is as it appears when we read this, as they are released in this Senate report, what happens then? I mean, is another special counsel needed? Where does this go?
Well, I think there's a lot more left to learn. Of course, these texts are coming from Ron Johnson's Homeland Security Committee. His committee was not told about them, any of them, by the federal government. They learned in news accounts. Now they've been kind of pulling them out, learning more from the IG investigation, the Inspector General. So I think we're going to see more of that information, but it does fill out the picture, and it naturally leads to where this really hasn't gone to this point. There hasn't been a whole lot of discussion about whether the president signed off on whether it was the Russia collusion stuff or the Clinton email thing. But you go back to that Comey decision where he basically throws out all the processes of the FBI, and at the time condemned by former officials from both Democratic and Republican administrations, saying, you know, this is not the job of the FBI director to make these decisions. And you wonder, how would he have the confidence to do that? And this raises the question of maybe he wasn't a loose cannon. Maybe this was coming from higher up.
And we'll see what more we learn on that. Meanwhile, we're awaiting the possible release by the president, who has the ability to make that Democratic memo public or not. Trey Gowding suggesting that the president may be in some sort of trap here if he redacts too much. So where does this leave us? Will we see this memo? Will the president release this?
I would think he would. I hope he does. Now, there is an issue, I think, particularly some of the footnotes. Maybe there's an argument for redaction. You certainly don't want, as they always say, sources and methods to be betrayed. But I think it would be very helpful for our public to get this full story out. And this may be a slanted Democratic view of things. I think you can assume it's going to have a very different take than the Republican one. But wouldn't it be better to get the facts out and debate them instead of having Adam Schiff, for example, ranking Democrat on House Intelligence, constantly making allegations and saying he's seen evidence, but we can't see it.
But the
this
question
is much healthier.
In what form we will see that memo, right? Because going back to John Kelly's signaling that there could be redactions of the documents. He says this is not as clean a memo as the first one. So you wonder what it'll look like ultimately if it is released.
That's right. I think it would be nice, though, if this was part of the discussion, and then let's learn more. I think a lot of Americans would also like to hear from the FISA judge. I know this is not normal protocol. It is a secret court, but I think it's an important question for our democracy, our republic. How did this happen that the government came to spy on the opposition party? And I'd like to know, was that, as I assume, was that judge very angry not to be told about some of the background, or is it this easy to issue a warrant to spy on the opposition?
Very serious questions.
For sure.
And that story continues to develop. James Freeman, always good to have you.
Good to be
Thanks
here.
for being here this morning. Bill?
8 minutes past. Fox News alert now. President Trump saying he'd love to see a shutdown if Congress doesn't take action on illegal immigration. Here was the comment.
If we don't change the legislation, if we don't get rid of these loopholes where killers are allowed to come into our country and continue to kill gang members, and we're just talking about MS-13, there are many gang members that we don't even mention. If we don't change it, let's have a shutdown.
Well, with just a few days ago now, 1 day to go to the shutdown date. Here's Chief Congressional Correspondent Mike Emanuel on the Hill. Mike, good morning to you. Where are we now? Where do things stand?
Well, Bill, good morning. A key player on bipartisan immigration talks here on Capitol Hill did not like that talk of a government shutdown.
A government shutdown is never the answer to any problem. And I don't believe we're in any danger of having another government shutdown. And I'm proud of the role that our group played in bringing the brief one that we had to a mercifully quick conclusion.
Sources say the big four leaders in Congress, McConnell, Schumer, Ryan, and Pelosi, are close to a deal on a 2-year agreement on new spending caps. It would not include immigration. They're expected to raise spending on military and domestic priorities, and we heard some bipartisan optimism.
Senator Schumer and I had a good meeting this morning about caps deal and the other issues we've been discussing for some months now. I'm optimistic that very soon we'll be able to reach an agreement.
It's an agreement. I've discussed some of the outlines with my caucus that I think we are very happy with, and hopefully the Republicans are, and then we can get something really good done.
Last night, the House passed a 6-week government funding extension to run through March 23rd, which would boost military funding through the end of the fiscal year. The vote was 245 to 182. Now it goes to the Senate, but Democrats there are demanding more domestic spending. So if that 6-week extension is dead on arrival in the Senate, the key to unlocking all this seems to be that spending caps agreement. So we're awaiting announcement on that later today, and it should be a busy 24 to 48 hours.
No question about it. It's not done till it's done. Thank you, Mike Emanuel, live from the Hill. Sandra.
Meanwhile, the president is not the only one pressing hard for border security.
We've got to address these issues. This is not a game. This is serious business. People's lives are in danger as you're out there, going after these guys. But we got to stop them where I live, at the border, and that includes the border security and closing these ridiculous loopholes.
That's Arizona Congresswoman Martha McSally. She is up next to talk more about this issue as an illegal immigrant is officially charged with killing that NFL player.
Also, there is big news this morning on Las Vegas Titan Steve Wynn and his multi-billion-dollar company. This amid sexual assault allegations. We'll tell you what's happening on that in a moment here.
And the White House says the president was just joking when he called bitter Democrats at the State of the Union, quote, treasonous. But is it time to put politics aside and get some actual work done? Our panel will take that one up.
Can you say for the sake of the future that you agree with Senator Flake on that treason or treasonous is not a punchline, is not a joking matter?
I don't really care what Senator Flake has to say. I don't think his constituents do either, and I think that's why his numbers are in the tank. The president was clearly joking.
Prosecutors have officially charged an illegal immigrant in a drunken driving crash that killed Indianapolis Colts linebacker Edwin Jackson and his Uber driver Sunday. The twice deported illegal immigrant now facing 4 felony counts in the crash on an Indiana highway. The Justice Department has also filed charges against him. Congresswoman Martha McSally is a member of the House Homeland Security and Armed Services Committees and a GOP candidate for the Arizona Senate. Congresswoman, thanks for joining us this morning. It's a terrible, terrible story happening over Super Bowl weekend. Your thoughts this morning as we have learned now that there are official charges against that illegal immigrant?
Well, first, our thoughts and prayers need to be with the families of the victims. This is a horrible situation that never should have happened. It's just another case of somebody who shouldn't be in our country, and now 2 lives have been lost. And the country is aware of it because of the, one being an NFL football player. But attacks and crimes like this are happening around the country all the time. Kate Steinle's killer was deported 5 times. Recent studies have shown that there's been some people deported up to 40 times. I mean, our border security strategy of the past is not working. Our immigration policies are not working. And I'm glad we have a president in office who's highlighting the issues and willing to work with us in order to stop things like this from happening. This is a very serious public safety issue, and our hearts go out to the families.
And you were in that roundtable discussion with the president yesterday. The president is obviously pushing hard for border security. He's making his thoughts on this very clear. Here he is talking about why we need our immigration laws changed. Listen.
We need these immigration laws changed. If we're just not going to be able to continue to do this. They just come in so fast, so easy. And then you have catch and release. You catch people and you have to release them right away. Not another country in the world has the stupidity of laws that we do when it comes to immigration. And if we don't get them changed, this isn't politics. This isn't Republican and Democrat. This is common sense. So it has to be taken care of.
Congresswoman, this is an issue that's so personal to you, obviously, in a border state, and the president, his strategy here. I would ask you, is it working? There you have him tying the MS-13 to the need for immigration reform. Is he doing all the right things to get Democrats to come around on his thinking on this?
Absolutely. He's raising awareness on these very real issues that are impacting communities around the country. Yesterday, the focus was MS-13. 10,000 gang members in 40 states and Washington, D.C., people that are being brutally murdered within just miles of the Capitol here in our communities. And the laws have to be changed. Right now, DHS officials cannot deport somebody because they're a gang member. They can't have them be inadmissible because they're a gang member. We in Congress have to change these laws, and my bill actually addresses and closes these loopholes that these dangerous cartels and criminal organizations are taking advantage of. So the president is raising awareness and asking the Democrats to come to the table to act for these public safety issues.
Will both sides ultimately see a compromise, Congresswoman?
I just would encourage our Democrat colleagues, please come negotiate with us. These are issues that everyone around the country should care about, making our communities safe, closing these dangerous loopholes, securing our border, moving towards a merit-based immigration system, ensuring that we don't have another DACA population in another 1 or 5 years. Come and negotiate in good faith. I think when the president put out his proposal recently and the Democrats gave some extreme responses to that, it seemed that it showed that they really didn't want to solve the problem. They just want to use it for electoral politics. Instead of actually addressing these issues. And so we're working on it. Our bill in the House, which addresses these important issues, is moving forward. We've got a lot of momentum. The president supports it, and we've got to get this thing across the finish line.
This battle is heating up for sure, Congresswoman, as that deadline quickly approaches to fund the government. What ultimately gets done as Thursday midnight's coming around pretty fast?
Well, let's be clear. There is no deadline to address this DACA issue before tomorrow night. There is a deadline to fund our military and give our troops what they need and the rest of the federal government tomorrow night. And the Schumer shutdown, I think, was a colossal mistake of them hijacking that process for an unrelated issue with a fake deadline. I don't think they're going to do it again. We passed our bill in the House, which include full funding for our troops. For the third time, we passed that in the House. Senate Democrats need to stop holding up and playing politics with our men and women in military and their families over unrelated issues. Fund the government, fund the troops, and come to the table, and we'll get this done.
All right. Congresswoman Martha McSally, it's good to have you on the program this morning. We'll see how this goes as we approach week's end. Congresswoman, thank you.
Yep.
So then, months after witnessing a military parade in Paris, President Trump putting in his order to the Pentagon for his own parade to honor the brave men and women who serve this nation. So what would that look like? Reaction on that story coming up in a moment.
Plus, a top Republican lawmaker says he believes President Trump will get a, quote, fair shake from Robert Mueller. So will he sit down for that interview? And more importantly, should he? We will pose those questions to Alan Dershowitz.
I have fear that jurisdiction may wander a bit. I think it already has. It's already wandered a little bit, but I would not blame Bob Mueller.
A deadly earthquake rocking Taiwan overnight. The powerful quake leaving at least 6 people confirmed dead. Local officials reporting hundreds of injuries and many people still missing. The shallow magnitude 6.4 quake causing buildings in the worst hit areas near the eastern coast to cave and collapse. Others tilting over on their sides.
Image that is, huh? President Trump telling the Pentagon to start planning a military parade to celebrate our U.S. Armed Forces. Apparently, he was rather impressed about a year ago. Bastille Day, Central Paris. Last July, a guest of the French President Emmanuel Macron. Lieutenant Colonel Ralph Peters, Fox News strategic analyst. Sir, how you doing? Maybe Macron will come back for this one, because I think he's due in late April. Well, what do you think of the idea to go ahead and show off the American might? Perhaps even down Pennsylvania Avenue?
Well, the French march well. We fight well. Take your pick. If we really want to honor our troops and support them, pass the defense budget. Give them the tools and the funding they need. You know, I understand the president can be infatuated with the military regalia and trappings. It's very seductive. But we have a different tradition here. when we do have military parades, we do honor the troops. It focuses on the human element, not heavy metal war machines rolling down the streets of American cities. And by the way, Bill, on a very practical level, if you want to stage a huge parade, you are taking troops away from their training. Just throwing away the training schedules is expensive. The money can be better spent elsewhere. So if the president wants a parade, he'll get a parade. Got it. But if we're going to have one, I would concentrate on the human factor, not tanks in the streets.
Let's do it all. Let me just shift the focus for that comment there, and I appreciate what you're saying there. If you watch the other members of the media reporting this story, you know what they talk about? Hey, do you know where they have military parades? Moscow and North Korea, suggesting that that's the whole idea. The idea came from the French last year. Let's be honest. Let's be fair about it, Colonel.
Well, of course we're going to be fair about it, but you know they're right that the people that parade weapons are the North Koreans, are the Russians, and you know, to us, this is
not to parade weapons as if it's some sort of offensive gesture, Colonel. This is red, white, and blue.
Right, Bill. I've served in the military for almost 22 years, enlisted man and officer, and let me tell you. I value our tradition of civilian control of the military being representative of our society, not apart from it. And look, we all have our views, and contradictory reviews or views can be equally valid. But I will tell you two things. One, as a former soldier, I don't like the image of heavy weapons parading through our streets, the streets of American cities. And two, look, when I was a buck sergeant or an enlisted man, and I heard there was going to be a parade, I just rolled my eyes because we were going to throw the training schedules out the window, and everything was going to stop until the parade was over.
Let's see if it happens, Colonel. If it does, we'll bring you on back and we'll debate it even more. Okay, now Mike Pence is in Japan. He goes to South Korea in about 24 hours. He said this just yesterday about increased sanctions on North Korea.
I'm announcing today that the United States of America will soon unveil the toughest and most aggressive round of economic sanctions on North Korea ever. And we will continue to isolate North Korea until it abandons its nuclear and ballistic missile program once and for all.
We're all going to be watching Seoul when the opening games, the opening for the ceremonies begins on Friday. But the real focus will be after the games are over. What do you think of the comment there from the Vice President, his presence in Seoul, South Korea for the next several days?
Okay, on this one, I'm all positive. All for heavier, much heavier sanctions. Don't announce them during the Olympics. That makes us the black hats, spoiling the party. But right after the Olympics, announce them and enforce them. And I'm very glad that Vice President Pence is going. He's going to be present at the Olympics, at least for part of the time. I mean, he projects firmness, strength. He's very presidential. And we need a strong counterweight there to the North Korean delegation, because the North Koreans are pulling out all the stops, and the South Koreans, our allies, are infatuated with this reaching out by the North. They're being lulled into believing that everything's going to be fine. North Korea is trying very hard to drive an ever deeper wedge between Washington and Seoul. They're not sending many athletes, but they're sending a pop singer. They're sending Kim Jong-un's younger sister.
It's a big PR move. It's going to get coverage too.
Pence has to carry a lot of weight, and I think he'll do it.
Thank you, Colonel. Ralph Peters there in Washington. Good to have you back today.
Is bipartisan a tainted word in Washington? The White House says Democrats must now decide what is more important, their hatred of President Trump or their love of country. Our panel will debate this one next.
Also, going where no car has gone before. Have you seen this? What a show this was. And going where no heavy rocket has gone in a long, long time.
Everybody's watching this stock market. Look at the Dow. An hour into trading, up 150 points. Back above that 25,000 level. Who knows what happens next, but all those market professionals trying to decide whether or not this market's finding a top or whether it's just a healthy correction that we've seen the past couple of trading sessions. We're watching it for you. Dow up 144 points. Meanwhile, Trump tweeting this morning, by the way, on the stock market, in the old days when good news was reported, the stock market would go up. Today, when good news is reported, the stock market goes down. Big mistake, and we have so much great news about the economy.
You've got half the room going totally crazy, wild. They loved everything. They want to do something great for our country. And you have the other side, even on positive news, really positive news like that, they were like death and un-American. Un-American. Somebody said treasonous. I mean, yeah, I guess why not?
That from Ohio 2 days ago. Sarah Sanders saying the president was joking about Democrats with that comment. But then she repeated something she had written last week. Brad Blakeman, former Deputy Assistant President George W. Bush, Richard Fowler, radio talk show host and Fox News contributor, one of our favorite panels. And gentlemen, good day to both of you, and good morning and welcome here.
It's good to be the
Sarah
favorite,
Sanders. What's that?
It's good to be the favorite.
Well, I can't say favorite because
one of the
we've
favorites.
got. Yeah, you go. Okay, that's. So Sarah Sanders said the following yesterday mid-afternoon. I want you to listen to the last part of this, okay? Roll it.
The president was clearly joking with his comments. What I don't understand, and what I don't think the country understands, is why Democrats are so upset about lower taxes and higher wages. That's something that every American should be celebrating, not crying about, not sitting on their hands for. Democrats are going to have to make a decision at some point really soon. Do they hate this president more than they love this country? And I hope the answer to that is no.
Do they hate this president more than they love this country? This is now becoming a theme, Brad. We've heard it twice in about 5 days. Go.
I agree. I've said it for a long time that Democrats have got to learn to love America more than they hate the president. There's been a resistance to this president from the day he was elected. They were talking about impeachment before he ever took the oath. Democrats have been against everything this president has done. And a lot of what the president has done has been good for Democrats, too. So they've got to figure out a way to work together. This is a town that should be run through compromise, not rancor. And there's a lot of things this president is doing because he's the most transactional president that they miss an opportunity if they don't deal with him on immigration and on infrastructure and on other things that are challenges.
You know, maybe it does, maybe it doesn't. Richard, do you hate this president more than you love your country?
I love being an American. I love this country, and I think if you talk to all the members of the United States Congress, they would say the same thing. Think about somebody like...
That wasn't the question.
Wait a minute.
Do you hate this president?
No, I don't hate this president. I don't think Tammy Duckworth,
there's your shot at redemption there. Continue.
Think about somebody like Tammy Duckworth, who's a senator who was harmed in war for this country. To call her un-American at a rally because she decided to sit during something that she disagreed with what you said, that is what I would call un-American. The ideal of Democrats and Republicans sitting during the State of the Union is something that is as old and as American as apple pie. Brad knows it, and I know it. I've been watching State of the Union for years.
Never been this obvious,
Never been this
Richard.
bad.
Come on. We had a sitting member of Congress say to Barack Obama, you lie. We had a sitting member of Congress say to Barack Obama, you lie.
One guy, and he's repudiated by Republicans.
Right, but this is my point. The civility in Washington is gone. This president doesn't help it when he goes out to Ohio and calls Americans treasonous and un-American.
Come on, Richard. Can't you take a joke? It was clear that the president was joking, and he was playing off the audience.
No, he was not. You don't joke about treason.
Please,
you don't joke about treason. You don't. Yeah. I'm sorry. Okay. It's a very serious crime.
You don't joke about racism either when members of Congress call the president a racist.
Richard,
we don't do it. The proof is in the pudding when it comes to some of his comments.
I got it. Richard, let's be clear on this. Somebody said treason. I guess, yeah, why not? Can we call it treason? Why not? I mean, you saw the context in which you delivered that.
But I'm talking about the beginning where he said they were un-American.
I know. This is the direct question here. Do you think he was dead serious when he made that comment? I guess, yeah, why not? Can we call it treasonous? I mean, did you take that literally?
Listen, I think when you're the President of the United States, Bill, facts and words matter if they're joking or if they're not joking. And to say that an entire party of this country, the other party that runs this country, and to call them treasonous, whether it's tongue-in-cheek, whether it's a joke, whatever it might be, it is not okay for the President of the United States to say it. I like the guy personally. I don't like his policies, but it's not okay for him to say these type of comments, period.
Brad?
Look, Donald Trump has been a transformational president. He says things that only people have thought before. It's refreshing. The American people get it. They know he was joking. They know he didn't mean it literally. We're not going to start rounding up people. But Richard, that's the part you guys don't get. You constantly are harping on things that the American people know was not taken in the context in which you want to give it. And that's what's hurting your party. You become so intransient against this president.
I respect you, but when when the press secretary has to come out and clarify the president's statement, that speaks to the fact that the president shouldn't have said it. Well, if it needs a clarification, oh, he was just joking.
She didn't clarify
that speaks to the. She did clarify it. She just clarified it in the clip we just watched.
She was pushing back against the narrative of the media.
She clarified.
To be fair, it wasn't a grand explanation, gentlemen. I mean, it was just a few words here and there. Listen, we can't pick favorite children around here, but you guys come on back next time, okay? I appreciate the gusto with which both of you gentlemen came to work today. Thank you, Brad.
Thanks.
Thank you, Richard.
Thank you, Bill.
New developments in the Steve Wynn sexual misconduct scandal. The casino mogul resigning as chairman and CEO of Wynn Resorts. William Lajeunesse is live from our West Coast bureau with more on what is happening with this story. William.
Well, Sandra, you know, this means that the hashtag #MeToo movement has now taken down the biggest name in Sin City. It means that what happened with Steve Wynn, a man synonymous with Las Vegas, did not stay there. Wynn helped transform Las Vegas from a place to gamble into an entertainment mecca. He is quitting the company he founded following an in-depth investigation by the Wall Street Journal that found Wynn, now 76, harassed female employees for decades and coerced them into sex. In a statement, Wynn said, "In the last couple of weeks, I have found myself the focus of an avalanche of negative publicity. As I have reflected upon the environment this has created, one in which a rush to judgment takes precedence over everything else, including the facts, I have reached the conclusion I cannot continue to be effective in my current roles." In one of the many claims of harassment against him, Wynn paid out $7 million to a manicurist who claims that she was forced to have sex during an appointment. Wynn denied the allegations and has blamed a vengeful ex-wife. Wynn started as a bingo operator who transformed the Golden Nugget. He built the Mirage, Bellagio, Wynn, and Encore resorts. And since the story broke, stock of that company fell 20%. He resigned as the RNC chairman, and the universities of Iowa and Pennsylvania stripped his name off buildings and scholarships. Now, in the last 4 months, since the allegations against Harvey Weinstein, more than 100 men have been toppled in what some call the Weinstein ripple effect, including now Steve Wynn. Sandra?
All right, William Lajeunesse, thank you.
So will President Trump sit down with Robert Mueller's team? His lawyers might be near a decision on that question, and Alan Dershowitz on whether or not he will or won't, whether he should or...
Two different questions.
Yeah, right on. That's both coming up next.
Do you think that President Trump can get a fair hearing in this process?
I do. In the court of public opinion or through special counsel?
Through the special counsel, for starters.